All right, guys, we're going to talk about a topic we don't speak about a whole lot here, and that is hair jig, finesse swim bait, tiny little jig, and the right rod you need to throw it. If you want to dive down this little light finesse application and how to choose the right rod, there's several great ones on the market. Join me. We're going to geek out on some rods. Let's go. Welcome to the Hookup Tackle.
Oh, what a stud.
Yeah. Look at that.
That was sick.
Woo!
Cheers, my friends. Happy Sunday. All right, guys, some breaking news. What's new this week at the Hookup Tackle?
What a beautiful post-spawn fish.
Look at that.
Look at that gut on that.
That's a nice fish.
Let's go.
Let's go. Welcome back, my friends. I am Ben with the Hookup Tackle, a Tackle Otaku on Instagram, being joined by my buddy CJ. CJ, top of the morning to you, sir.
Top of the morning. How's it going?
It's going well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty great. I'm excited to talk about this. I feel like it's very timely, and a lot of guys are getting into this style. And
Yes.
good ones.
This is a topic that we don't talk about very often, and I think probably because when you think light line and ultra finesse, they're so small they're falling out of my hands, right? We are talking about 1/8 ounce, 1/16 ounce, 32nd ounce, tiny little jigs, little jig heads with swim baits, light line. Like this is ultra finesse land here, basically. This is a category that's just so incredibly effective. I mean, I think every human on the world knows about spark shad, Okashira head, right? I mean, every smallmouth angler in the country throws this. It's something you could throw year round. You know, there's tons of companies that are making little finesse jigs, right? You got companies like K-Tech and Duo and Raid and Imakatsu all making these little things. You've got hair jigs. Of course, there's tons of like homemade hair jigs. Spro makes a fat fly. I mean, there's all kinds of little finessey baits like this. And I'll never forget the first time I ever saw this done in a tournament. I was fishing Lake Havasu in January, and it was just ultra. I mean, it was fucking terrible, right? I mean, you fish all day just trying to get a bite. I had 2 bites in 2 days and got it checked. That's how terrible it was, right?
Dang.
Meanwhile, running circles around me was Gary Dobbins, and you know that dude's arms are like this big, and his fingers are like this big. And he's got, you know, at the time, a 7-foot spinning rod was kind of long, right? Because we were kind of coming out of this drop shot revolution where everything was like kind of 6'8", 6'10", right? Evolas were still a thing, 6'9", 6'10". And I see him, and this huge dude's just like, as hard as he can, he's casting the spinning rod, just, and then this bait would like literally fly like 12 feet from his boat, just boop, land. I'm like, what is this idiot doing? And he's just jacking them, right? I'm like, I don't understand. And then it kind of just took off from there, right? And a lot of guys up north, you guys have been throwing hair jigs for years and years and years, but this is a product category that has become a very dominant way of catching fish a lot of the year. It used to be really more of a wintertime technique, but a lot of places that are traditionally world famous smallmouth fisheries, like even the St. Lawrence River, Lake Ontario, Great Lakes, you know, a lot of these guys are switching to hair jigs because the pressure is getting so intense tournament after tournament after tournament, where they're not eating a drop shot the same way. They're not eating a jig the same way or a tube, and they're having to downsize into something. So, you know, when the fish are lethargic, they're not ultra aggressive, going to that little light bait can be really effective. But casting a 1/16 ounce or an 1/8 ounce bait is not a lot of fun if you have the wrong gear. Okay, so we are going to talk about 5 rods that I think you guys should keep on the radar. These are the 5 most popular rods that we have in the store. I'm going to kind of break them down and show the differences to you guys, because having the right rod is really the key to enjoying this technique. So if you have the right rod, you set up your reel with the right line, you can cast these all day long as far as you want to cast them, and you can enjoy the experience. So a proper, we're just going to call them hair jig rods. Now, you guys might not ever throw a hair jig. You might just be throwing an Okashira screw head, spark shad combo, or a little finesse jig, something like that. This category of rods, really, all these rods are going to be that 7.5, 7.6, 7.7 length, right?
Yep.
It seems like that mid 7 foot length is kind of the magical size. Once you kind of approach 8 foot, the rod just becomes kind of clunky and cumbersome. When you go much shorter, you don't have enough flex at the tip to really load how you need these to load, right? And let me demonstrate that. Let me just grab one of these here. This is the Megabass Destroyer P5 Flyssa, which has historically been, probably over the last decade, probably the most spoken about rod in this category. Let me just kind of show you what I'm talking about. At the tip, you can see the tip is very, very soft. And so if you're throwing a little 16th ounce hair jig or a 16th ounce screw head with a little spark shad, when you come back here to cast it, you need that rod tip to be really whippy at the tip so that it loads, even that little lightweight, even that 16th ounce is still kind of loading that rod, so that as you come forward and you whip this thing out there, that tip is helping you propel that bait out, right? So this length, this 7.6 length, kind of seems to be the magical length, and all these rods are kind of in that zone, right? So that's the first thing that you're looking for, is you need it to have that whip on there. Then from there, it's going to come down to personal preference, how you like the grip, where you want your hand to sit, and kind of what else you're going to do with the rod. Okay, so there's two kind of styles, it seems like, that you see repeated across brands and across categories. And style one would be something like this Flyssa, where it's definitely has more flex in the tip than the rest of the rod, but the whole rod still kind of bends through the middle. It's relatively parabolic. So for me, the Flyssa's kind of been a surprising rod. It reminds me a lot of a Windbuster with a soft tip.
Yeah,
it's
that's
kind
exactly
of the way I look at it, right? So, you know, before the Flyssa, it was kind of Windbuster and then baby plugging. Baby plugging had no power.
Yeah.
It has all the whip, so that could have easily been in this category, but it doesn't have any power to it, right? So this kind of combined the best of that rod and the best of the Windbuster into one.
It's a nice middle for sure.
It is. So for lighter line, lighter weight baits, for me, this is kind of like the, you know, the one that everything's kind of measured against, and it has been historically. Now, if you guys were used to the old Flyssa, new Flyssa, I would say, is maybe a slight, ever so fraction heavier power, but it only feels that way really because of the P5 build. It's that carbon cross weave build instead of just a traditional run. Once you're fishing it though, it feels almost identical. So, you know, I like this kind of more tapered bend for things that have, I would say, more cast and wind, so like swim bait type things, which I do a lot on a bait like this. Okashira screw head, little ball head, fat fly, you know, hair jigs, things where I'm kind of casting and it's kind of controlled depth and it's more just kind of slow and I can feel that tick way out there and all I gotta do is just kind of pull back. I like this kind of bendy action because a lot of times you'll feel that tick and if you set the hook, they actually missed it, right? Because a lot of times you're fishing in really cold water and they're just kind of almost nipping at it, or they suck it in and spit it out really fast, and maybe there's 2 or 3 fish and one spit it out, and if you swing and jerk, then all of them kind of freak out and swim away. But if you just kind of don't feel the tip and you just kind of lift and it's not there, if you just kind of lower your rod tip, a lot of times the second or third one will get it, then you lift again and he's on there. And that kind of parabolic bend just lets you kind of set that hook and get them. So
get the bait too a little bit.
Yes. Yeah. So there are 2 other rods in this category that are worth looking at. For me, this is my favorite, but there are a lot of guys that don't like this grip. P5 spinning has a very polarizing grip system to it.
Pretty minimal.
I love this grip. In fact, just in case you guys aren't used to it, this is the only thing I'm going to say about reels. In this category, you're going to want to put probably a 3,000 or a 4,000 reel on here. I like a 3,000. A lot of guys even go to a 4. you want that larger arbor, you want that larger spool to be able to just let that really light line. This is 100% braid to fluoro here. You want the lightest braid you can get away with to usually a pretty light fluoro tube, but sometimes you could even get away with an 8 or a 10 pound leader, but you need that light braid to be able to just fly off of this. So 10 pound, 12 pound braid, you know, kind of at the max.
Yep.
3000 fits it good. So when your hands on here on a P5, this is basically where your hand is sitting. I like this because your fingers, for me, are right on metal, and metal is going to transmit sensitivity better than any other material, right? So a lot of rods have like a longer tapered grip that I'll show you. I don't like those as much. I want to feel everything. So once I got used to this and my fingers just kind of compress that into my hand, my fingers sit there, this is super comfortable for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the feel of the P5 grips. A lot of people just can't get used to it and they're not into it.
Yep.
And so if that's you, that's fine. Okay,
That's
I got some other options for you. Okay, so
Don't
two other
panic.
rods in that category. NRX is compared a lot to P5. NRX has a rod called the 901. Okay, so the 901 spin jig rod, kind of the same rating, same length, very similar bend. Okay, so you can see it's kind of parabolic through this midsection. The reason I choose Flyssa over this one is for two reasons. One, this rod keeps bending. So you can see
Yeah,
even
look at that
all the
piece.
way down here to the grip, I'm still bending it. It never really gets a backbone. So for me, this is a lot like the baby plugging was, where yeah, it's whippy and it throws a mile, but when you get a 4 or 5 pound smallmouth on there, you have no power.
No.
It never actually stops. It just keeps bending all the way to your grip, and I just feel like I don't have control. And it might just be because I suck, but I don't like the lack of control, and I'm not a huge fan of this kind of blunt grip. I just don't like it as much as the other grip. Personal preference. A lot of you may way prefer this grip over the other grip, and there's nothing wrong with it. You're weird, but it's an option. Okay, so that would be another solid option. Another great option would be in the Tatula AGS line. Now, there's actually two rods in this line that are hair jig rods, and this gets confusing, right? This is the Chris Johnston hair jig rod. Thank you, Griff. I was just thinking I should have cut that off.
Look at you.
Let's stand by and just stare awkwardly at each other.
We'll put some like elevator music in the background here.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so here is a look at this. So a similar grip, I would say, to the NRX, only this one's a little bit shorter. So if you wanted to hold above the reel, you could have your fingers on that blank. There are two hair jig rods in the Tatula AGS line. There's a Chris Johnston and there's a Seth Feider, and I'll show you the Feider here in a minute. The Chris Johnston one is designed more like these other two. Okay, so it's going to have that softer tip. You can see it's got a really, really light tip, probably the
super light.
lightest of the tips. And then it's pretty parabolic through the middle, and then it actually gets a backbone, right?
I like that, yeah.
So it's a really nice rod. This would be a great option if you don't want to spend $500 or $600. You want to stay in that 300 range. This would be a good, solid option for you guys. Now, the other category of hair jig rods is more of a faster action designed to throw these hair jigs, but also kind of cross over as more like bottom contact, more finesse, soft plastic type actions, okay?
sure.
And what you're gonna get on this kind of rod, now this is a rod known as the One. So this is a 7.6 mag medium light Steez, one of our best selling spinning rods of all time. So you have more of that tapered grip. If you sit back here, your hand's gonna be on the cork. If you put it above the reel, you can get your fingers to that reel or to that rod and be on the blank. This is going to have the soft tip at the top, but you can see it gets really fast. So basically this whole back section is all butt section, right? And then it just has that little tip. So you've got enough tip to make the cast, but the rest of it is really fast. So this would be maybe a better option than the Flyssa, the 901, and the Chris Johnston hair jig rod. If you guys are throwing a lot of other finesse plastics, if you're throwing really light Neko rigs, if you're throwing you know, lighter drop shots, little light tubes, you know, things where you need the rod to be a little faster. Maybe you're trying to snap stuff off the bottom, do more like that. This could be a better type taper for you than that more parabolic bend, okay? So again, it all comes down to preference and what else you might be doing, what else you might cross over. Again, if you're just doing maybe hair jig, little finesse jigs, lighter plastics, this might be better. But if you're throwing in that little swim bait and there's times where you just want to kind of just lift on the rod, I prefer the first action over this one, but there's a place for both.
Yeah,
okay?
definitely.
So the other rod that's almost identical to this, again, is in that Tatula line. This is the Seth Feider hair jig rod. Okay, so it's pretty much the same lure ratings as the Chris Johnston. People get really confused because they see hair jig and hair jig and like, what's the difference? Here's the difference. This is almost identical to that Steez, where it's got all that flex and tip at the top, and then it's pretty much all backbone again down here. So you kind of have the same rod.
Yeah,
honestly,
very similar.
You know, if I hold this, and it's EVA. So if your hands are only allowed to touch cork, then this is not going to be for you. So a little stylish, different. But I mean, honestly, if I was to bend, this is the Steez and the Tatula. If I can get them even. Similar.
Very similar.
Yeah.
Very, very similar.
Yeah, similar. So almost the same bend. Slightly different, but very, very similar. And if we did the same thing with, say, the Flyssa and that Chris Johnston one.
Yeah, look at that.
Similar. Through the middle.
Yep.
Right, we could even add that 901 in there.
It's crazy.
They're all very similar. Really, what's nice is that you have options, right? There's options in this category based on personal preference, based on, you know, price, but more than anything, kind of based on the grip that you like to have. Because it's kind of a long rod, you're gonna be making really long casts, so you want to make sure it's comfortable to be throwing that thing out there and then, you know, fishing it back in all day. So there you go. I hope that was helpful. Hope that was useful to just kind of shed some light on this product category. Of course, if you guys have any questions on hair jig rods or these little small swim bait rods, drop it down below. I'd love to get an answer for you guys. We'll leave links to all the products if you want to check any of them out closer. And as always, if you guys have rod questions, hit me up on Instagram. Shoot me a DM. I'm happy to send some videos. I can show you guys the bends, the tapers, whatever you guys want to see if you can't make it in store to put your hands on yourself. So on behalf of myself and CJ and Griff and everybody here at the Hookup Tackle guys, thank you for the time. Thank you for your business. We will see you again soon. Enjoy your light line hair jig season. Peace out for now.
See you guys.